We will now look at the steps to Method B of DOTD TR 202, which is the pressure method. This method measures air content from observing the change in volume of concrete with a change in air pressure. It is not a suitable method for concrete mixtures that contain highly porous aggregates. An aggregate correction factor is needed for every concrete mixture and is usually supplied by the concrete producer. The test procedure gives the process for determining an aggregate correction factor.
Now, before we can test our concrete for air content with the pressure meter here, we need to make sure we have all the supplies necessary. We have our bowl portion of our air meter here. It's 0.25 cubic feet in size. We have our upper lid portion of our air meter. It's got the gauge built into it, all the compression stuff. You need to inspect the O-ring down here on the bottom of it to make sure it's not damaged in any way. Need our standard 5/8 inch diameter tamping rod. We need a rubber mallet to help consolidate the concrete. Need our standard metal strike-off bar. We have our rubber ball syringe here to help fill up the air meter. Standard concrete scoop, a source of clean water, and napkins to help clean off the flange of the air meter. After verifying that we have all the equipment necessary to run our air test, next thing we need to do is get our aggregate correction factor. Usually the supplier of the concrete will provide you with this factor. In our case here, for the mix that we're using, our aggregate correction factor is 0.2. Now that I've obtained my sample in accordance with DOTD S301, first thing we need to do is dampen all of our test surfaces that are going to come in contact with concrete. Take me a damp rag here. Dampen my bowl. I'm going to dampen the underside of my lid here. Also, I'm going to inspect the O-ring of my lid and make sure that there's no holes that are clogged or anything like that. My strike-off bar, it's sitting in water, so it's damp, and my tamping rod is also sitting in water, so it's damp. I'm going to go ahead and fill my rubber ball syringe with water so it's ready to use whenever I need it. Alright, so now that our test surfaces are dampened, what we need to do is fill our test bowl here in 3 equal layers. I'm going to use my 5/8 inch diameter tamping rod to rod each layer 25 times. Spiraling pattern, start on the outside edge, and I'm going to work my way towards the center. I'm going to use my rubber mallet, and I'm going to try to dislodge any large voids of air 10 to 15 times. Now when I rotted that first layer, I was real careful not to strike the bottom of my measure here. Now each layer after that, I'm going to try to go down at least 1 inch into the underlying layer. Now you notice with my mallet, with each layer, I'm trying to strike mid-layer. So my first layer I struck down here with the mallet, my second layer here, and my third layer is going to be up towards the top. Now Now my third layer, I'm going to overfill my mold slightly so when I rod it, if there's any consolidation, I won't have to add any concrete to it. So same thing with the final layer. I want to penetrate the underlying layer about 1 inch. Now I'm going to use my metal strike-off bar to strike my measure off flat. Okay, I finished off my surface flat with the edge of the mold. Now what I want to do is clean my flange here so we can get a good seal. That's why it's good to have a good source of towels for your test. All right, now that my flange is clean, what I'm going to do is put on the lid to my meter. We'll make sure I have both petcocks open here. Now in my case here, what I want to do is latch opposite corner latches at the same time. First these two, then the opposite corners on the other two. Now that I have my lid on, what I need to do with my rubber ball syringe, I'm going to slowly start injecting water in one petcock until it starts coming out of the other petcock. Now what I'm going to do to make sure that there's no air lodged up underneath the lid anywhere, I'm going to put my thumb over one petcock. I'm going to tilt the device in the opposite direction to get any air pockets out. Then I'm going to refill that void. Now it's time to pressurize our device. We're going to use our built-in pump here to pump to our initial pressure line. Each meter has a different initial set point, but it should be indicated by a bold line on your dial gauge. I'm going to allow a few seconds for the air to cool. Tap my gauge, make sure it's exactly where we want to be. I'm going to close both of my petcocks. And then what I'm going to do, as I release the air that's compressed in here into the chamber, I'm going to use the mallet to simultaneously try to dislodge any localized pockets of air. Tap on my gauge to get it to settle out, and then I'm going to take my air reading. 2.6%. Now remember, for this mixture, our aggregate correction factor was 0.2. So we'll subtract that out of our reading here, and our final air content is going to be 2.4% air.
Use caution when disassembling the air meter because it is under pressure. You should cover one of the petcocks with one hand while opening it with the other. Always clean your equipment following the test.